Hi, everybody. I'm Carol Jenkins. I'm co-president and CEO of the ERA Coalition. In this time of we must stay at home, we thought we would do some interviews with people who are so influential to the Equal Rights Amendment movement. And so today we are talking with Nevada State Senator Pat Spearman, who has brought us to this wonderful moment of having the 38 states. It was Nevada that took us from the 35th to the 36th state, then Illinois passed it, and then Virginia this year. So Pat Spearman, thank you so much for being with us today to talk about this movement brought to us by your efforts.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm really glad to be here, and I am excited that we now have 38. And so we move into the second phase of the fight to get into the Constitution. And you know, Carol, I was thinking the other night, why is it this hard? Why is it this hard?
I know. Well, for those who don't know, we've been working on this for 100 years. Yeah. It was first proposed by Alice Paul in 1923. And in the 70s and 80s, we got very close. Congress passed it by the 2/3 vote needed. It went out to the states, and we needed 38 states, and we only got as far as 35 states. But that was before Pat Spearman stepped into the action. Now, when you raise this issue of the Equal Rights Amendment, take us back to that moment. I mean, that was extraordinary. Nobody thought that we would ever get those final 3 states, or few, I should say.
You know, Carol, people who know me know that when I set my mind to do something, if people tell me that I can't do it, it's like saying sick 'em to a pit bull. And when Jeanette asked me if I would carry the bill, at first I really didn't think that we had a chance. I remember when it started, and I remember when we came 3 states short, and I thought that was the end of it. So when she asked me if I would carry the bill to ratify, I said sure. And you know, people said, well, you know, why are you doing this? It may look like a stunt, and you know, there's probably another bill that you can. I said, well, you know, equality is important. Right. It's important regardless of who you're fighting for to get equality, who you're fighting to get equality for. So it just didn't matter to me who said that it wasn't going to get done. I knew that I was going to get it done. So gathered a lot of people here in Nevada, and Jeanette Dean was, I mean, she is just as much as
I met her, yeah, she's quite something too. You're a great team.
Exactly. And she gathered up all the people, because I told her, I said, this is not going to be easy. So get as many people as you can. And she managed to get, I guess probably about at least 200 people to come to the Capitol the day that the bill was being introduced to the committee. Right. We testified. The meeting for that bill was probably about 3.5, maybe 4 hours long. And we were really excited because everybody on the committee, except maybe one person, had something to say, and they all looked like it was positive. The very last day, this is 2015, the very last day, the very last hour that all the bills had to be out of committee, we were told they were not going to move it. Crushed.
Right. Which often happens in this push for the Equal Rights Amendment. Yeah. It took more than one try.
It did. And I was running for re-election in 2016.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to the women who were standing outside the committee room and just in tears. And one lady was like, right. You know, I've waited 40 years for this, and I don't know if I'm going to be alive. I said, you hang on, we're going to get this done. Get back to the Senate, and I promise you, this will be among the first bills that I will attack when we get back in 2017. And so I ran on ratifying the ERA. I ran on ratifying the ERA. I ran on renewable energy.
Which was a very unusual platform to have. People must have looked at you like, what?
Yeah, they did. They did, you know, but I always tell people, you know, the difference between a heretic and a genius is time. So, you know, it was really our time. It was really
well. You're clearly a genius, because in 2017 you got it done, which was an extraordinary thing. We were all sitting in the office. Now the coalition, we should say, is comprised of over 100 organizations across the country working for the ERA, and we had been working on the Start All Over bill. We were working on the 3-state bill, which meant that we only needed 3 more states. And when we got word that this had passed, we looked at each other and said, does that count? And everybody, we checked with our lawyers and they said, yes, it counts. And then, so you were the impetus then for Illinois the next year and Virginia this year. So we're still in this movement. Some obstacles have come up, but talk to us about where you see this present moment in search of the ERA.
I think that even before COVID-19, what I said at that time was equality is breaking out, not just in Nevada, not just in Illinois, not just in Virginia, but equality is breaking out all over the world. And this is something that you cannot stop. You cannot stop it. And so once we get on the other side of this pandemic,
right.
I think that the interest that was generated with the 38th state, with Virginia ratifying, the interest is still there. It's a little bit subdued because of the health crisis that we're in right now. But this is something that we will not be stopped. Whether the archivist will go on and record it or whether we have to wait for Congress to extend the deadline, whatever we have to do, this will happen. This will happen. Make no mistake about it. This will happen.
It will happen. We should say that the archivist that she refers to is actually the head librarian of the United States, whose job it is to certify ratifications. And he, based on a Department of Justice order, has said that he's not going to until he's ordered to do so by a court, meaning the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, the attorneys general of Nevada, Illinois, and Virginia have sued him, saying he must, to compel him to certify. So we have that going on. And then we have SJ Res 6 percolating in the US Senate. The House of Representatives has dissolved the time limit. Now this bill, SJ Res 6, is there waiting to be taken up. As we know, not much has happened in the US Senate. There are over 250 bills that have just gotten stuck somehow. But it's sponsored by Ben Cardin from Maryland and Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, and a Republican, by the way. So it's a bipartisan bill. So you think this is going to happen, Pat Spearman. I was just reading an article about you, describing you as having equality as your middle name. And, in this article, it goes through the fact that you were a military, still are military, a minister in the LGBTQ community. You've got a business PhD. I mean, is there anything that you haven't done yet? And you've been fighting for equality on all of these fronts.
The one thing that I haven't done is stop fighting for what I believe in. I haven't done that, and I won't do that. Yeah, and Carol, let me say this, because I think this is an interesting point, an interesting intersection in our fight for equality. Our current Attorney General filed suit was, at the time that we ratified in 2017, was our majority leader.
Right.
Aaron Ford said on the very first day, he said, this session, we will ratify the ERA. And so he's been with me. He was with me as the minority leader in 2015. He was with me in 2017. And I am sure that he is not going to give up the fight now. He, like myself, is a fighter. So we're not going to give up. This is going to happen. Here, I say to people who are trying to figure this out, you're either going to stand on the right side of history or you're going to stand on the sidelines while we make history. You make the choice, because it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And you don't want your children and your children's children to look back 20 and 30 years from now. And if you are in a legislative or an elected position and you have an opportunity to vote for ratification in whatever form, you do not want your children and your children's children to look back and say, why didn't you vote for this?
Right.
Or even, for that to be a part of your legacy. Why would you want that to be part of your obituary? This is going to happen. Get on the bandwagon. We are going to have it. We are going to have equality, and it will be equality, our equality that will be in the Constitution, period. Full stop. Get on the bandwagon. It's going to happen.
And I want our viewers to know that Pat Spearman said that before the Judiciary Committee. when they were considering, I say we were all fighting for and considering the dissolving of the time limit. And Pat was such a powerful speaker on behalf of equality, and told them essentially that, the Congress people then, that if they didn't get on board, that they were going to be forever, listed as anti-woman, anti-girl, anti-equality. So you were very persuasive. We thank you so much for being there for that for us, Pat.
Karen, can I say this too? Because
Sure.
I think what we did on that day was amplified in June when John Oliver on
Right.
Last Week Tonight, when he presented it, and the way he presented the obstructionism and opposition left, for people who are thinking people, it left no doubt that this is something that should have happened long ago. And
Right.
so anyone who has an IQ above a rock understands why this is important. And
we urge you to watch that. It's on YouTube. I was a little offended because all of the articles that followed that said John Oliver has a great idea. Let's pass the ERA. Meanwhile, Pat and and all of us have been working on this for a zillion years. But we thank him for that. And certainly encourage you to watch it, because one of the very clever things that he did was to question why exactly they were opposed.
Exactly. And so I want to say two things too, if I can. And if you got more questions, just hold on just a minute. Number one, the census.
We have a great This is the way we talk all the time. I want you to know, by the way. Yeah. So go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, I'm ADHD, and Carol just plays right along with me. So thank you. So the census, the 2020 census, everyone must fill that out.
Right.
And we must fill that out because people have to know that we are here, number one, and have to know that in the various states where we live, we have to make sure that we get our share of the money. The second thing is, on November the 3rd, we will send a message loud and clear just how important the Equal Rights Amendment is to us. And just like I ran for re-election on the ERA, I'm saying to everyone, like we said in Virginia, anyone who is opposed to this and anyone who will not go along with us trying to get our equality into the Constitution, anyone who will not stand up for our equality should find another way to stand, another place to stand. In other words, if they can't stand with us, vote them out, period.
Right.
Period. And the House has already passed it. So everyone who voted yes in the House must stay there. And those who are in opposition in the Senate must go. And the other thing that we have to do is we have to restore the rightful name to the Justice Department, and it has to be the Justice Department, not just in name, but in deed. It can't be name justice and then injustice in deed. And so take that for what it's worth. We've got a job to do November the 3rd, and I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to fight with everybody who wants to fight with. Let's get it to the finish line. Let's get it.
And my advice would be for everybody to pay attention to what Pat is saying. Either do it or move out of the way. You called me recently because you were concerned about, during this time of COVID, that the issue of domestic violence was going to be an extraordinary one that we need to deal with, and that the Equal Rights Amendment, would give much protections for women and children and men who are subject to domestic violence. Here in New York, I was just reading a report that said that reports were down, and that really frightened people who are working in the domestic violence, field, because they know that that means that somebody is too afraid and too secluded with the abuser, to actually make a call.
Mm-hmm. Or worse. Their injuries have been reported as an accident, or their demise has been reported as an accident. During this time, and this is another reason why it's so important for us to get this done. During this time, prior to COVID-19, people who were victims of domestic violence and worked could at least look for a respite when they went to work.
A place to go. A place to go.
And even if they didn't work, if they were able to get out the house and go and visit or just go to the mall or go somewhere, there was some place to go.
Mm.
Now there is not a place to go. You couple that with the fact that most abusers are very insecure. Very insecure. That's why people who commit domestic violence
Mm.
are insecure, and they think very little of themselves, and that's why they have to beat on someone else to make that person feel as small as they do. That's it. They are very insecure. And so anyone who has already participated in domestic violence and has lost their job,
Right.
has a lot of economic insecurities coming along now, financial distress, et cetera, they're going to take it out on someone. You know, about a month ago, I think it was about a month ago, in my district, very tragically, a father had too much to drink.
Mm.
His wife was at work. His 2 teenage sons were at home, and his daughter was at home.
Mm.
And he shot both of his sons,
Mm.
killed them, was trying to kill the daughter. She got away because she jumped out of the window of the
Right.
apartment, and he turned the gun on himself.
I know. You were telling me that story, and it's heartbreaking. And so, what advice do you give to your constituents and to people who are watching this now? I know that there are all kinds of codes. You know, there are, be on the alert for if you haven't heard from your friends, and in some time, check on them in whatever way you can. What are you telling to your constituents about what to do during
Well,
this time?
here's what I say, and I say to people who are members of the clergy
Mm.
or faith community, within your congregation, even if they've not said anything, you have a pretty good idea who is or is not being abused, and you may even know to what extent. So make sure you're calling. You can't come by, but set up a Zoom meeting so that you can see them face to face. Do a FaceTime, whatever you can do so that you can see that person. For people who are in social clubs, people who are in sororities or fraternities, talk to them and make sure you can see them. Somehow you have to see them face to face so that you can see their eyes, so that you can see the furrow of their brow, so that you can
Right.
look at them and if something's going on. But call your friends, call them, and just, we're home all the
Right.
time. And other than folks like you and I who are stuck in Zoom land, most of the time people can answer. But do whatever you have to do to stay in touch with them, because
That's
people who are in those
that's
situations,
great.
they're isolated. And
That's great advice, right? Yeah, and just before we go, I want to talk a little bit about other ways, because we still get questions from people who say, "Well, what is the ERA going to do for me precisely?" What are you saying to people these days? Domestic violence, creating laws, creating, ways to make sure that women are protected in that way, in the workplace as well, equal, pay in the larger sense of creating a culture where women are valued, even if it doesn't change that specific thing in corporate life right away. It will eventually. What are you saying?
what I say to people is what it will do. In 2017, I carried the bill to ratify the ERA. In 2019, I carried the bill for equal pay for equal work, and we got that passed. And someone came up to me after the governor signed it and said, "Well, you got it done. You got your work done." I said, "No, not yet, because
Right.
it's only one more state." So what the ERA will do is it will make it illegal across the country to
Right.
pay someone differently solely based on their gender. And I would just encourage people to go and look at what we did in Nevada, because we have some very, very strict penalties for those who can't understand it the first time.
Right.
And the Nevada Equal Rights Commission, we call NERC, if they rule the second time in 5 years, then there's another escalation in fine. And 3 times there's another escalation in fine. And we have some very clear parameters when people can say it wasn't gender, it was about what they could do.
Right.
That has to be spelled out. So number one, equal pay will become the law of the land, not just the law in several states. Number two, for people who are being abused by someone who is an intimate partner, a spouse, a boyfriend, or whatever, for those people, now it's not just a criminal liability for that person, but you now can go to court and say, my civil rights were violated.
Ah,
Women
right.
who are sexually harassed and who are pushed out of their jobs because, you know, they didn't say yes or whatever. Those women will now have an opportunity after the ERA is codified to say my civil rights. So it gives a greater gravity, if you will, to any case that would come before the court to say something has happened to me and I deserve to be recompensed for it.
So Nevada, you know, you all are in the forefront. You're at like a woman-led state now, right? You know, don't you have, I mean, what you see what you started, you have more women doing things in that state
Now,
than men now.
we have the first female majority legislature in the country. For the first time in Nevada history, we have a woman who is the majority leader, Nicole Canizaro, and I hope that you'll have her on. She's just
Sure.
absolutely fabulous. She's just
Great.
fabulous. We have a majority Supreme Court, state Supreme Court, that's women. In our constitutional offices, the lieutenant governor is a woman, and oh, by the way, she's also president of the Senate.
Right,
The
right.
assistant majority leader in the Senate is a woman. The speaker, the majority leader in the assembly is a woman, and the assistant majority leader is a woman. So when you go through all of that,
Right, right,
if you want to know what happens when women are in charge, go
right.
back and look at what we did in 2019. That's what happens when women are in charge.
Okay, well, we definitely will take a look at the leadership, your leadership, Pat Spearman, involved in all of that. I remember getting the text from you. We got pay equity, we got this, we got that. Just an incredible long list of accomplishments. And so equality, Pat Equality Spearman, we are so thrilled to have been talking with
Can I
you
say one
today.
more thing? Can I say one more thing?
Sure, of
The other
course.
thing we got done in 2019 is we put into law, we codified a woman's right to reproductive health.
There you go. There you go. So that's what you can expect when women are in charge. Pat Spearman, thank you so much.
Thank
We'll have
you.
to do this again. I know you have a lot more to say, and we want to hear it too. So uh,
Thank you.
Nevada State Senator Patricia Spearman, Patricia Equality Spearman, thank you so much for being with us today. And for those of you out there watching, you can go to our website, www.eracoalition.org. We have a map there that you can click on and speak directly to your senators for SJRES 6. And we have a pledge that you can take to join us in this movement to give equality to women and girls across the United States. Thanks so much for being with us today. We'll see you the next time. Thanks so much.